Hi,
Hey, Holly.
how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Is it just us so far?
I guess, yeah.
Well, how
And
was your weekend?
good, good. I mean, I'm still in Costa Rica, so I'm, doing a lot of activities like hikings and, stuff like that. So it's really nice.
Wonderful. Good.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you
Yeah.
have a lovely stay there.
Oh, I do. Yeah. How was your weekend? Did you do anything special for Friends and Family Day?
I was very lazy and it was wonderful.
Yeah. That's what you need sometime, I feel.
I think so too. Hi, Libor. Hi, Nick.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Hello, how's it going?
How's everyone?
Pretty
Exhausted.
good.
I've been hanging out at my brother's house, so I've been looking after the kids, and
Uh,
How old are the kids, Nick?
uh, one is almost 4, and one is almost 1.
oh,
Okay.
Oh,
it's a lot of activity.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
a lot of energy.
Hey, Mike.
Okay. It looks like you're first, Nick. You have the first item.
Um. Oh, is Dan moved BS? Okay, that's fine. So I need to include the issue, but a bit of context. So with value stream for the last 6 months, we haven't really made any updates because we've been put it on pause, waiting for a proper product manager to come in and decide what the direction and vision will be. So now that Larissa's here, we're starting to put together a little bit more of a vision for what's in store for value stream, which is like our a flagship feature for analytics, let's say. So I'm going to show you basically what I think we can achieve in the next 3 months and sort of talk about how this is going to be a structure that we can use, which is flexible enough for any teams to use, and how this can be used as well to direct users to different types of analytics throughout the product as well. So right now, I mean, this is vision for the next 3 months. So the sort of feedback that I'm looking for can be very detail oriented. Anything from, I think this color could be changed, to this line looks weird, or this spacing, to things from like the information architecture and it doesn't make sense, and so on. So I'll quickly sort of show you where we're going in the next 3 months. And from there, I'd love some feedback around what I just mentioned. I'll share my screen. So you can see, there we go. And if I can get this thing out of the way. Here we go. So this is the value stream overview page. And a value stream, in case you didn't know, is basically taking an idea all the way to deployment and production and have it in front of the customer. So that's basically encompassing the entirety of our DevOps lifecycle. And then you can configure stages to sort of be particular for you. So in this case, I've taken our product development flow and I've started to map it. And at the overview basically shows the aggregate of all the different stages combined together. And a couple of the most useful features or metrics around these stages are: one, how long items or issues stay in the stage. So that's the time. Two is how many items are in the stage, and that can often be called the load. So how many things are currently in this stage. And then three would be things like what is the distribution or composition of items in this stage? So are there features, are there bugs, are there security vulnerabilities, that sort of distribution. So this is the overview. And we can think about value stream in terms of two data sets. There's the data set where there's items which are currently within these stages, and there's the data set of historical items that have been in these stages previously, but are no longer in this stage. So that gives us the two data sets of current items and past items. And current items are useful for basically helping you to deliver items currently, whilst past items are helpful for spotting trends over the last few months or whatever it may be, and understanding what has contributed towards these particular metrics currently. So current items, we have a number of different metrics here. We can see lead time. And when you hover over these things, it gives you the definition of the metrics, as well as a little bit more of the scope. So I can zoom in there, and it tells you stuff like, this is what it's not working. This is what the metric is. This is what the trend is, and this is what the scope or the date range of the metric is. We have these charts, this one is like a waterfall chart and shows you the cumulative number of or amount of time spent in each stage. So you can see how long it's taking. And this one shows sort of the number of items that are distributed across each stage. And as I talked about before, you can go to the historical view, which basically takes these metrics and stretches them across time. So you can start to see how have my metrics improved or gotten worse over time, over a certain time period, date range. How many items have come in, how many items have left within a certain week, and how has the accumulation of items changed? And then what is the velocity been? Velocity being the weight of items delivered or shipped within a certain time frame, like an iteration. So that's the overview. And then you can define your stages in such a way where you name the stage, and then you can select like a start event, end event, like issue created to label applied for a particular issue, and then save those, and that sort of automatically creates these things. And then you can go into these individual stages. There's a similar popover across this, and from here you can again see how long time has been spent in dev, the stage, the number of items or the load within dev. And then you can do things like associate MRs with the issues in here. So within dev, there'll be a number of MRs, and you can roll that down, get an overview of what are the MRs that are contributing towards this issue. And that aggregate time of how long things have taken for MRs is what contributes to the issue. So giving you a more accurate representation of the work done. And then the idea here is there will be a number of stage-related DevOps metrics, which you can click into, such as like create analytics or plan analytics or whatever that may be. And those would provide you with more specific things like mean time to merge or whatever it may be. The idea being that we have some key stage metrics like plan, create, CI/CD that you can go into here and sort of get another view on what's going on. And again, in a similar way, past items can, from the historical view, can be shown across time within this time frame. And you can also look at past items right here as well and see what are the potential things that have driven this to stay in this stage for so long or whatever it may be. So you could filter and find outliers in that sense. So that's that. We have the value stream. The value stream can be divided into current and historical data sets. And then you can dive into the individual stages of the value stream, again, in current and historical data sets, to get a better understanding of what are the factors that are impacting the amount of time things are staying in a stage and the number of items that are currently in the stage. So you can find bottlenecks and so on. So yeah, this is near-term vision, thinking in the next 3 months. So any type of feedback from the information architecture to nitty-gritty style details are welcome.
Okay. You want to go, Holly? Oh, sorry, you're on it.
Thank you. One thing I was just actually noting regarding styling, we have an issue to enlarge those assignees images. I know they're teeny tiny. If you pull them maybe from the
I think
Is it just
Holly's
me?
yeah, Holly's frozen.
That's a good place to freeze.
Yeah,
Not too awkward.
We'll take a screenshot.
No, no. Come on
I'm
back,
curious.
Holly. Oh, you're back.
Oh
Okay.
no, I just got a message that I had dropped. Can y'all
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, we can now.
I don't remember where you left off, but it was a good 10, 15 seconds, I think.
Oh no.
Yeah, sorry.
I'll just quickly then recap. There is an issue for enlarging those images, the little assignee icons. Separately, I'm really excited about the work that you're doing here. This is really awesome. I know this is something that Gabe and I have talked a lot about in relation to iterations and being able to track work. I'm curious if you have given any thought as to how to surface or display any of these metrics within a board environment. And I know that's going to be more Alexis and I as well, but I know that when I worked at a competitor years ago, we did surface some of this information in a board setting, and we had to get really small with some of the visuals just to make it fit in that view and not add too much clutter. So just curious about your thoughts on that.
So the first step is for like basically integrating stage specific metrics and board sort of stuff is to connect the board just with like a link. And then I'd say if we wanted to bring up these metrics in context of a view, yeah, I'd say on the board side of things, we'd probably want to show the equivalent value stream for that board. I think what's planned is with customizable workflow stages, we are hoping to do basically exactly the same thing. So we have mirror images. One is a board and one is the customizable workflow stages. So that should make it easy to move between these two views whilst maintaining the scope of data. And then in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to do some updates to the filter, which this filter bar, which also controls like the view as well. And I'd say the recommendation there would be potentially within the board view, you could have like a type of roll down, which shows metrics or hides metrics. That's sort of what I was thinking. So this, like, think about the sort of similar to this within the filter bar, you could have like a chevron, and that could show you some of these key metrics and then link to in a similar way this, and you could use these single stack components for that. So that's the extent of what I've done. What I've found with analytics in general is it's very tempting to integrate these different analytics pages and stuff together to start out with, but for the MVC, like I think it's easier just to like link to stuff and create clearer links, and then when the value between navigation is more proven, that's when you start to integrate the stuff rather than repeating yourself. But yeah, I think it's a good place. It makes sense to have this sort of stuff in boards.
I think that makes sense though, to start with just linking as well. And part of the research that we could do is just understanding if people want to see that information all the time, or if it could just be hidden behind maybe a link that you click and it expands. So, but that's great stuff. I'm really excited about this work, Nick. Thank you for sharing.
Cool. And Libor, by the way, we're interested in how Jira issues may work in this as well, because one of the top things we keep on getting asked is how can you give me value for this feature without using GitLab issues, because we use Jira right now, and so that's like a sort of direct impact on this. So I think in the short term, the easier thing is to provide like an MR only value stream, whereas in the longer term, it'll be like an issue only value stream that potentially integrates with Jira as well.
Yeah, that's a good call, Nick. Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I know right now it's not, our integration is not part of the value stream. So yeah, let me start thinking about that a little bit more, and we'll connect at some point to see what we could do. Like what's what's the MVC for that, you know?
Yeah, I think I think it's probably not going to be prioritized in the next year, but it's just something to be aware of, I think. Yeah,
Definitely. Yeah, I know that's something definitely we'd want to get working. So
cool.
And we're at about halfway through, a little more than halfway, and so that Daniel has time for feedback, we should probably move on.
Yep.
If you want the feedback, Nick, do you want it in the Figma on the prototype?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Cool. All right, Daniel, take it away.
So mine's actually not terribly in-depth, but just kind of going over what we were talking about in the settings work. I had a chat with Nick and Michael Lay, and Nick had brought up this drop down that I totally forgot about, the more drop down at the top, and you can see it in the agenda, but I'll share my screen also. So the idea being that anything you see here doesn't actually exist as attached to a sub item of a group or a project. It kind of lives in limbo, its own thing. And so I was wondering if anybody had interactions with that or any work that they were doing around that. Like I said, Michael Lay was doing an exploration on trying to kind of clean it up a bit and how it could work with, for example, the admin, which I was working on. The idea being that, so these are functionally what's called instance level features, but the work that we're doing in Access with Alex Pooley in the back end, he's doing a kind of a proof of concept. There's an object called namespace in the system already, but it's not really utilized. And so we're going to try and make these things attached to this object called namespace as part of a way to unify or define like an object around people's environment in the .com environment, because it doesn't necessarily exist or there's not really a way to interact with it. And so, sorry, this is enough of the cat. So yeah, the idea was that if anybody had any interactions with that or knew anything more about how that was attached to an object or where it was attached to some sort of interactive component or some settings that anybody could use within the environment, or is it just an abstract thing that lives here and it kind of doesn't necessarily do anything apart from provide data.
What do you mean by not doing anything but apart from providing data?
So where is the interactive component? Where is the settings definition? Where can I create or do anything with that apart from just clicking in that? Is that the only location that it's interacted with? And then where does the data from that those objects get aggregated from?
So yeah, as you said before, these are instance level features, and they sit at the more menu because they don't, our navigational construct at the moment doesn't allow for instance level features. We don't have like a left hand nav bar for instance level, so they sort of sit there. So I think most of those live at the instance level, meaning that they're not available on .com. And then that link that I shared is basically the effort to move those to .com by creating this organizational construct called a workspace. I don't know how workspace and namespace relate to one another, but I'm familiar with all these efforts going on with workspace at the moment. So I asked the question, what does workspace mean, and how does it relate to namespace, or vice versa?
Yeah, so namespace is actually in the code already. It exists as an object that just lives there, and it's kind of a defining object for certain things, as like a group or a project is based around it, but it's not specifically a group or project from my understanding of what the dev aspect means of it. But the idea is that we're going to be using this namespace object, because it already exists in the code, as this container, which would functionally be this workspace environment. And so, but my curiosity was that it does actually live in .com, because I'm looking at it. I'll share a screen again. It's not necessarily tied to just the like here GitLab.com, and I'm in this security thing. But so like this is already attached to something, but my following up is like, okay, well, where do I make these changes or interact with or work with anything in here? Like, okay, well, milestones are defined elsewhere externally, but where does that attach? Same for like snippets, right? These things don't exist because they don't exist attached to something. I want to know where I can get those to interact with them or make those definitions, right?
And you're talking about this from a settings perspective, just to confirm.
Yeah,
Right.
because part of the settings work is like, okay, well, this stuff gets tied into that, but where does it get defined? And that's sort of what I'm trying to find. Like, is this something that's done externally?
So what's important here is to not define the settings based off of the way that our technical organization is configured, because that can be very confusing. You should define the settings based on how the user's mental model of how all these things fit together. The workspace or the workspace container is going to be effectively to the user the exact same thing as the instance level container. So and then these features may not necessarily like have a settings panel at the moment, but yeah, maybe well, you're doing the right thing by working with Michael Lee to like figure out how the navigation is working and then create something parallel to that around the settings, so that the mental model is the same, I'd imagine.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking, is that not trying to be prescriptive or rely on what exists currently, more so just an understanding of why it's there or what it is exactly, and say, is there a better way that this can be done? Is there a more logical way that this can be done? And so I was kind of curious if anybody had any interactions or any work around those things.
The only stuff I've done is on that navigation exercise that I did. And that navigation exercise was very much like from the perspective of this is how users interpret it, rather than this is how it actually technically is organized.
Yeah, Daniel, one quick comment on that. I know when I started initially at GitLab, we were doing some work on making sure that integrations was kind of labeled in the same way across the group, project, and instance. It's because they were all different. So we did want to kind of unify that. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but we did see a need for just kind of making that consistent from instance level to group level, at least.
Yeah, that's another part of the project, is making sure there's consistency between the environments and making sure there's parity there.
Because that parity is also super useful, because when we eventually collapse projects and groups down into one concept, it means that it's much more easy to collapse them.
That's what I was just thinking as well. I was trying to find the issue. I'll put it in the agenda just in case you want to look over that, Daniel.
Yeah, cool, thanks.
But yeah, our IA is really, really weird.
Looks like in the Figma that you linked to, Daniel, you're having some, are you exploring or having some conversations about information architecture settings?
Yeah, so mostly I'm trying to define where the objects make sense in terms of the settings panel. So in the settings panel, everything's just kind of thrown in. And because we're trying to split them into different features or themes, so for example, the hardware settings versus the GitLab environment settings, and then do that first initial separation, and then do more granular separation of, okay, do these things make sense broken down in a more intelligent manner, or is it okay to leave them at this first kind of 2-level separation, rather than just continuously throwing things into the settings and just piling it in, especially when there's no search in the settings, so it's really hard to find this stuff. I spoke with Cynthia a bit, and she had a ton of feedback. So I'm going through on the version 2, the much longer artboard, kind of separating everything and taking her changes and trying to recategorize and re-architect them.
Okay. And I didn't, sorry, I keep accidentally pressing a keyboard button. I didn't catch the part where the more menu, how that connects with the settings IA. I'm sorry if
Well,
I
so
didn't explain that,
it was
but
mostly not directly attached to the settings, but more so trying to understand what those objects are, how they take data and how they're attached to the environment, because these settings have to be, the admin panel has to attach that same environment. And so like if you saw the proposal that Michael A had done, I'll share my screen again. He had kind of cleaned up what was in there already. But just by saying, okay, well, we have all of these things here by the, for example, milestone snippets, etc. But then he also added the admin feature, which is something that I'm trying to poke at. And I was thinking, okay, well, if these objects are all attached to this instance space or some place that exists within the environment, where does that exist? How can I attach the admin screen to that as well? And then also anything that's related to that, for example, like membership across the organization, which is buried in admin, can that be put somewhere else? So this is kind of tied to other things that I'm working on, but mostly just kind of like a general high level understanding of what's going on in this area of the platform and how I can interact with it or add to it or clean it up.
did you get what you needed from this group? Because we're almost out of time. I just want to make sure you got info.
Yeah, it was mostly just a high level, just kind of, this is what I'm doing. If anybody has any info, please feel free to add. I'm going to continue researching and working with Michael Lee.
Yeah,
I was actually looking for the exact problem solver.
I just to reiterate, this is all really like abstract stuff, and it's really hard to wrap your head around. For the sake of easing collaboration and communication with other people, I'd say I'd really recommend like drawing out these containers and sort of pointing to where you mean, because it's so easy to sort of get confused with this is a namespace, this is a workspace, this is an instance. I think it'll be much easier for you and make efficient communicate. There you go. Perfect. Lovely. So use that.
Yeah, I had done this as part of the Figma file, just to kind of help explain what people would be seeing. And so those things are attached here at this top level, but we're calling it namespace for now.
So yeah, and watch out and make sure there's no conflicts with the workspace initiatives that's going on right now, because people are working on that.
Yep.
In a nutshell, what is the workspace initiative? I want to make sure we're talking about the same. Or
I shared the issue in the thingy.
Okay, so you're not referring to the projects. This is the projects and groups functionality discussion.
No.
So it's not simplifying projects and groups. Okay.
Workspace is creating feature parity between .com and self-managed at the instance level and creating this new construct called workspace.
Okay.
At a high level, they're sort of related.
Very abstract and annoying stuff.
It's words. The words get in the way, to be honest.
Yeah, really. All right.
What was that, Daniel?
I was saying at a high level, they're sort of related because we're having to do parity between all these objects, and you need to attach the functionality between the environment.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week.
Bye.